Hey you guys, welcome back to my channel. I am really excited for today's video. It's gonna be a long one, but I'm gonna be ranking and swatching all of my cream and liquid bronzers, blush, and highlighters for you guys today. And I am breaking it up by category. So we're gonna start with bronzers, move on to highlighters, and finish with blushes. Just because it was hard for me to try and think through like ranking these with all of the products together, because obviously like some are used for bronzer, blush, and highlight. So I am going to be ranking each separate category, and then I will swatch everything and I'll insert footage of the swatches so that you can kind of see shades, etc. as we go along. But if you guys are interested, stay tuned. First, if you have yet to subscribe to my channel and you like project painting content, or you just like to chit chat about makeup, I would love if you would consider subscribing before moving on. And other than that, let's just jump into the video. Okay, I genuinely would not be surprised if I accidentally miss some products. So if I do, I'm just apologizing in advance, but let's jump into the bronzer category to begin. All right, so I do have 13 cream/liquid bronzers to rank for you guys today. And this category was really hard because, to be honest with you, with the exception of the bottom two, I really love my cream bronzer/liquid bronzer category. So this was really difficult. Take everything with a grain of salt. I will do my best to describe everything so that, you know, something that could be towards the bottom of my ranking may be something that would work better for you and would be towards like the top for you and your makeup preferences. So I'm gonna start with my least favorite in my collection, and it is, so this is bronzer and contour. I'm including both in this category. This is my cream contour from Fenty Beauty. I have mine in the shade Amber. And for me, this was never really my favorite formula to begin with. It is a little bit stiffer. For me, I have to like warm this up on my hand before I can use it on my cheeks, and it's a little bit harder to blend out. I do feel like the wear time on this, because it is like a stiffer formula, it does set on the face nicer and it does have a good wear time. Sometimes I feel like with cream and liquid products, they can wear away on my face, you know, more quickly than like a powder product does. But for me, in terms of shade, it's more ashy than I prefer. And then also, I'm just not a huge fan of the formula. I have my Oma Beauty like contour highlight wand now that I just prefer so much more than this. So I cannot tell you the last time that I reached for this product. So that is why that one is coming in dead last at number 13. And then coming in at number 12, this is the newest to my collection, and I was super excited to receive this in PR. This is from e.l.f. It is their putty bronzer. I have mine in the shade Tan Lines, and for me, I was just so underwhelmed by this product. It is such a sheer product. The only time I ever really enjoy using this is if I am using like one of my sheerest tinted moisturizers. I'm talking like my Herborian CC cream or my Tarte Hydroflex, with like not mixed with anything else. It's just such a sheer product, and it doesn't have a great wear time on it. It's also not my favorite to like blend out or use either. Using a brush, I feel like it doesn't work that well. Using a sponge isn't my favorite, so I really do actually like to just use my finger, tap my finger onto my face, and then blend it out with a sponge rather than like actually dipping my sponge into the product. I just wasn't a huge fan of this. I wasn't that impressed with the formula. I know it is less expensive, but for me, it just does not perform like many of the other cream or liquid bronzers in my collection, and I think you can get better at not too much more of a cost, especially considering like the size of this is pretty tiny. So for me, this was kind of a bust. So the next four products I would say I do really like. These are definitely ones that I probably would not repurchase when I finish, but I do like the product and I would still recommend them, at least to like some group of people or another. But coming in at number 11, I have my Tower 28 bronzer, and I have the shade is this the West Coast bronzer in Bronzino, I believe. For me, this is a bronzer that I only like to use at very particular times, because it does have, I have to like swatch it even to like look at it. So it is a glowier bronzer, and typically like cream and liquid bronzers are like matte. Like typically, at least in my experience or at least in my collection, the majority, if not all of my other liquid/cream bronzers are a matte formula. Whereas this is almost like I could use this as like a bronze highlight. It is so beautiful, and on days that I want a glowier look, I will just put down a different cream bronzer that has a matte formula, and then I'll go over top of this lightly with using a beauty sponge and just lightly tapping this onto like this part of my cheek, and I think it gives just the most beautiful effect. It also is more of like a red tone bronzer, so it really does kind of give that sunburnt, sun-kissed sort of vibe, but it's just not something that I would reach for on its own or on an everyday sort of basis. It's kind of like I reach for this on very specific occasions, so that's why I had to rank it lower. I do still really like this, and I'm unsure if I would repurchase this, so I can't say for certain I wouldn't repurchase, but I also don't know that I would repurchase that one just because I use it so infrequently is what I'm trying to say. Coming in at number 10, this one is newer to my collection as well. This is from Persona Cosmetics, and it is the Bronze Stick, and I have the shade Dune. So the Persona formula only comes in 2 shades. A lot of the products that I'm going to talk about today don't have the best shade range. And the Persona bronzing stick is very, very warm toned. So if you do not like a warm tone bronzer, this is definitely going to be a skip for you. For the summer, I really, really like this. I think it's a really, really easy formula to work with. I really enjoy using this when I'm doing my reverse foundation technique. So when I put my cream and liquid products on first and then go over it with a very sheer like skin tint type of product. I don't like to use this over top of, I only like to use this when I'm doing the reverse foundation technique, I should say, because times that I have used this where I am using it over a skin tint or foundation or whatever it might be, I found that this blends out super patchy and it's just a little bit harder to work with. It's easy to blend, but it can be, or it can get really patchy. There was one day I filmed and it was the one and only time I have used this over foundation because it like picked up really weird and it just looked so bizarre. And the entire time I was editing the videos that I filmed that day, I was like, I hate this so much. So if I'm doing reverse foundation, I love this. Again, very user-friendly in that it blends very easily onto the face. But for me, I have had issues with it being just patchy and picking up my foundation if I do try and wear this on top of foundation. So I don't necessarily know that this is going to be for everyone. I've heard a lot of people rave about this, and I've heard a couple other people have the same issues as me. Coming in at number 9, I have the Patrick Ta She's Statuesque Cream Contour and Powder Bronzer Duo. She's Statuesque is the shade that I have, which is the lightest of the, I believe, 3 shades. I wish I had gone for the second or like the middle shade on this. I was going back and forth, and I do feel like that one would have suited me better just because this is really light and really only suits me when I am at my fairest. I do think this is a really nice product because you do get kind of 2 products in one. You get a contour and then you also get a bronzer. I do actually really like the bronzer. Even when I do have a self tan, I can build this one up and I think it's really beautiful. I will say that the cream contour is a little bit more stiff in formula as well, but I do think it's beautiful in that it's not so ashy. It's more of like a light, I just like the tone of this for contouring. Sometimes I feel like contours can just be too gray toned, and this I just feel like is a really nice contour shade. It really just comes down to shade on this for me and why I'm ranking this one at number 9. I could see myself picking up the middle shade just to kind of play around with that as well, but for right now this is ranking number 9. Coming in at number 8, I have my Danessa Myricks Power Bronzer in the shade Light. For me, this comes down to shade again. This is another really warm toned bronzer in my opinion, so I really only like to reach for this in the spring and summer months just because it does pull so warm on me. But it is a really, really, really easy formula to work with. It doesn't matter however you like to apply this bronzer, it's gonna apply very easily. It blends super easily. And this has a really good lasting power on it as well. I've been impressed with this. I'm just ranking it lower because it is more warm toned, and I usually like more of a neutral bronzer, not so warm. Coming in at number 7, I have my Oma Beauty Contour and Highlight Stick, and I'm just specifically going to be reviewing the contour in this portion of the video. I love this. This is such an easy formula to work with, so user-friendly, so creamy, so blendable, and I really like the shade on this as well. It's another one that is not too like grayish in tone. It's not too ashy. It's just a really beautiful contour shade. I use this all of the time on my nose, and when I am more fair, because I went with the shade, oh, I forget, White Pearl, which is one of the lighter shades, possibly the lightest, The contour really works best for me when I am fair and don't really have a self-tan, but I love this product. I think it is so good. Highly recommend that one. Basically, this product I love so much and would highly recommend. So coming in at number 7, I have my Charlotte Tilbury Hollywood Contour Wand. I have mine in the shade Fair Medium. I really enjoy this product because it is just so easy to work with. And for a contour wand or for a contour shade, I really find this to be more neutral leaning. So it's almost like a bronzer contour in one rather than just being like strictly a contour, at least for me and my skin tone and my preferences. And I know a lot of people don't like the applicator on this, but I actually really like it. I think it makes it really easy to apply. I just dot it on my face and then blend it out with either a brush or a beauty sponge, and it's very easy to use. $38 I know is more expensive, and it doesn't feel like you get a lot of products just because like right away the air bubble kind of goes away and then it feels like you have no product left. But I'm currently trying to pan one of the like blush wands, and it is taking me forever. So I really like this, and even for the price, this is something I would repurchase. Coming in at number 6, I have this one from Soul Body. I believe this is the least expensive with the exception of the e.l.f. bronzer in my entire collection. I have mine in the shade Light, and this definitely would have ranked higher if it's a shade thing for me. So the shade I think is pretty, but it is, I don't know what it is about the shade that isn't just my absolute favorite. I wish it was a little maybe more neutral leading, even though it's like a light warm sand. I don't know how to describe the shade, but if the shade was just like a little bit deeper or a little bit more, I don't know. Let's talk about the formula. Very easy to work with, very easy to blend, super creamy, super blendable. You can use this with your finger, your sponge. My favorite way to apply it is I have this Real Techniques brush that's just so old that I really like to apply. That's my favorite way to apply cream bronzer, and it works well with any of those ways. Very affordable, you get a ton of product, and I am really impressed. It's just a shade thing. So that's where we are with that. Coming in at number 5, I have this one from Iconic London. This is a liquid bronzer, and I don't think that this is going to be for everyone. So this is their Sheer Bronze liquid bronzer. I have mine in the shade Golden Hour, and this is a very sheer bronzer, which makes it nice for those of you that either like a sheer bronzer or might just be dipping your toes in liquid/cream bronzers. You really cannot mess this up. I literally just like put this right on my face and usually blend it out with a beauty sponge. You can also use a brush, but you really cannot go too heavy-handed with this just because it is such a sheer product. This is beautiful on days that you want kind of like that no makeup look, maybe just going in with like a skin tint, but you want to just add a little bit of warmth to the face without looking like too makeup-y. I think this is beautiful. I was really skeptical because liquid products definitely intimidate me more than cream products, but I have been so impressed with this. Coming in at number 4, I didn't know that this was limited edition. I didn't realize it, and I don't know if you can get this anymore, but this is the NARS Sun-Kissed Bronzing Cream, and I have mine in the shade Laguna, which is the lightest of the 2 shades. This is a pretty full coverage cream bronzer. A lot of times with cream products, they're just not as full coverage as like powder products, but this is pretty full coverage and also really pigmented. I feel like the shade is pretty flexible in that you can really sheer it out as long as you don't apply too much product, but you can also build this up because it is so pigmented to be like a pretty intense bronze. The first time I used this, I went in with a brush and I didn't realize just how pigmented it was, and I was like, holy smokes, this is gonna be way too dark on me. But with a beauty sponge or like a really light tap of the brush, you can really sheer this out as well. So it's a very flexible formula and flexible in its shade, kind of, if you will, or coverage, I guess. I don't know, but I'm a huge fan of this. I think it's really nice. I like the shades of the 3 above it, just a hair more. So coming in at number 3, I have my Huda Beauty Tantour, and this is another product that is more full coverage, or leans more full coverage than a lot of my other cream products. I have mine in the shade Fair, and I love the shade of this because this is another one that's kind of like that cream or that contour bronzer kind of hybrid, in that I feel like it really gives good shape to my face while also still looking more bronzed rather than like just chiseled and contoured, if that makes any sense. I'm a huge fan of this. This is another one that like you can go very light-handed with this, and that's really all you need. You can get a little heavy-handed with this pretty quickly, but I think this is a great product and one that I will continue to purchase and recommend, although I think it'll take me literally forever to get through this. Coming in at number 2 is a tried and true. This is one of the first products that really got me into cream products, and it is my Milk Bronzing Stick Matte Bronzer in the shade Baked. I have used quite a bit of this. I'm not going to roll it down now because my packaging is like kind of broken, but I have probably used like a third of this product already, and you get so much product in this. Honestly, if you're considering this, I would just recommend purchasing the mini. The mini, you still get a ton of product, plus it's smaller, so it's like easier to apply. If you're applying directly to the face, it's just easier to apply more precisely. I really like to just swirl my brush on top of this and then just like pounce it out on my face. That's my favorite way to apply this at this point in time. But this is another one that's just so user-friendly in that it's so blendable, and I just feel like you really can't mess this up. I know that they don't have a lot of shades, but if they do have a shade that works for you, it's a really beautiful product. And then coming in at number 1, I have this on my face right now. I feel like I'm looking super glowy. I'm testing quite a few new products that are glowy, and I'm like, ooh, girlfriend, you're glowing, and like, it just is what it is. But my number 1 favorite cream bronzer in my collection is the Tarte Breezy Bronzer. The Tarte Breezy Bronzer in the shade Seychelles. I have mine in the mini. I have used this so much. I did finally hit pan on mine, and I'm going to try and use this up this year. I feel like I'm confident I can use this up this year, and it will probably be my only bronzer empty. This is 100% something that I will repurchase. I'm trying to decide if I should repurchase the mini and just use another mini, or if I should repurchase the large one because it is my favorite. I'll probably just honestly repurchase the mini because I feel like a mini could last me a good year, and I would hate to buy the large one and then have it go bad before I can use it up. But this is another one that's just so smooth, so creamy, so easy to blend onto the face. Dries down really nicely, has a really good wear time, but is so easy to blend out. This is another one that I like to just dip my brush in and then bounce it onto my face. You could also use your finger, your beauty sponge, whatever it might be. It's so easy to apply. If you are a beginner, I highly recommend this. They do have other shades in their line. I'm not sure how many. I love this shade because it's just very neutral leaning while still giving me a summer glow. And I just think it's such a beautiful cream bronzer. So definitely my number 1 in my collection. That is it for the bronzer category. I would love to know your guys' favorite cream and liquid bronzer in the comments down below. But let's move on to the highlight category. All right, we are moving on to cream and liquid highlights. And I actually have more liquid highlights than I do cream, whereas bronzers, I definitely had more cream bronzers than I did liquid. I actually only have 9 highlights to rank for you, and one of them is my Charlotte Tilbury Hollywood Flawless Filter. I am not ranking my Auric in this because Auric I don't really use as a face highlight, whereas this sometimes I do use strictly as a face highlight. But let's start with my number 9, coming in dead last. I have something that used to be a favorite last year. This is my Glossier Play Night Shine highlight, which you can't even get anymore. And I used to like this so much more than I do now. I don't know why I'm swatching it when I'm going to insert swatch clips. The last few times that I use this on my cheeks, I just did not feel like it did anything good for my face. I felt like it just made me look like I had texture, and I just wasn't a fan. Right after I used this, I tossed it in my to declutter pile, but I haven't decluttered yet, so I figured I would rank this for you. And then coming in at number 8, pretty much from here on out, I like all of these highlights. But coming in at number 8, I have my Rare Beauty liquid highlight, and I have mine in the shade Mesmerize. I do really like this formula. I do find that the Rare Beauty liquid highlight formula is more sheer than a lot of other highlight formulas, except for I'm looking down, I'm like, yeah. Another one that I have ranking way higher is sheer as well. And I do prefer, have definitely been preferring a more sheer highlight. This one is just very, very sheer. So if I am doing like a reverse foundation or if I'm filming, usually I will not wear this. I oftentimes reach for this when I'm doing very minimal makeup. So I'm just not reaching for this one quite as often, which is why I'm ranking it lower, but I still like the formula. And if you like a subtle glow, I do definitely recommend the Rare Beauty liquid highlights. On the opposite end of the spectrum, I have this one from Iconic London, and this is a very, very glowy product. One little dot of this is plenty. And I love this for reverse foundation because it does just give like the most intense lit from within, like lit through your foundation sort of look. I haven't used this as like a body glow highlight, but I feel like it could also be like super beautiful for that. This one is in the shade Original, so it's more of like a golden champagne. And when I want a super intense highlight, I will use this. And sometimes if I want like a super, super intense highlight, I'll lay this down and then layer something else over top. So this is the one, this is the liquid highlight that kind of got me into liquid highlights. So I do enjoy that. I've just been opting for a less glowy highlighter. 6 and above was really, really hard for me to rank because I love all of these. But coming in at number 6, I have this one from Westman Atelier, and this is in the shade, it's the Lit Up Highlight Stick in the shade Nectar. First of all, like shade, 10 out of 10. There is something about this that I just absolutely love. The reason I'm ranking this at number 6 is 1, it is so expensive, and 2, it has that sticky formula that never really sets down and just kind of remains sticky. So it makes your skin look wet and glossy, and it's really beautiful. But if you're going outside and it's gonna be windy, or if you're going to work, your face is going to be sticky, which is just kind of a bummer. And the reason that I had to rank it lower, if this set down, woo, it would probably be ranking at like number 1 or number 2. But just because of that sticky texture, I had to rank it a little bit lower. Coming in at number 5 is the highlight end of the Oma Beauty Double Take Sculpt and Strobe Stick. Again, I have mine in the shade White Pearl. I think this is so beautiful. It's glowy but not too glowy, and it just like really gives me what I'm looking for lately. And even with the self tan, I like the like subtle kind of lit from within finish that this gives. It's super creamy, super easy to work with, very easy to blend. I literally just go right on my face with this and then blend it out with a beauty sponge, which is basically how I use all of these. I haven't been talking about application as I've been ranking these highlights, but that is how I use that one. Coming in at number 4, I have the Charlotte Tilbury Pillow Talk Beauty Light Wand in the shade Pillow Talk. Love the shade of this. This is, again, this is like a medium intensity. Like it's more than subtle, but it's not super blinding and intense like the Iconic London. And you can really sheer this out pending the amount of product that you use. Again, I actually really like the applicator of this because it's very easy for me to just dot on the cheeks and blend out either with my finger or a sponge. I think it's beautiful, very user-friendly, very smooth on the skin, and just so gorgeous. Coming in at number 3, I'm ranking my Charlotte Tilbury Beauty Light Wand. I actually love this just all over the face as like kind of like a foundation liquid highlight hybrid, but occasionally I will use this just to highlight my face for a very subtle highlight glow, kind of just glossy glow. And I do love this for that as well. I think it's beautiful. This is something I love, this and the Auric kind of for different reasons, and would want to always have this and the Auric Glow Lust in my collection. So I had to include this one in the ranking. Coming in at number 2, I have my RMS Beauty Highlighting Quad. My favorite shade out of this is obviously the one that's pretty much gone, which is in the shade Champagne Rosé. It has such a creamy texture. I will say not all RMS highlights are created equally, and they all kind of have a different texture. I'm not a huge fan of the Living Luminizer. It's just very icy and also just leaves kind of like this wet, never set down. I will say all of the RMS highlights don't ever really like truly set down on me, but they set more than the Westman Atelier stick. They do just kind of remain a little bit sticky on the skin, but the Rose Champagne shade I am just like so obsessed with. It's very subtle, but just so freaking beautiful, and I obviously love it because I pretty much used up the whole thing. And then coming in at number 1, this is a very new product to my collection, but already I like know that this is just it for me, and I'm so glad that I picked this up. It's from Lisa Eldridge. It is the Seamless Skin Elevated Glow. I have mine, I think, in the shade Elevated Glow. This truly just gives a glossy skin effect. It is definitely a subtle glow. It's not going to be super intense, so if you love to like be highlighted, I don't feel like this is going to be for you. But if you like to look off-duty model glossy, just like super healthy glow to the cheeks, like almost like you're like walking among people and like you're an angel and you're like, you just have this like special glow to your cheeks that other people do not have. This I love. I just cannot describe the finish of this. It's such a thin texture, so easy to blend, so easy to work with. You can use a finger, sponge, whatever. I love the doe foot applicator. It's one of the easiest products I've ever used, and that is not always the case with liquid products, and it just gives the most beautiful finish to the skin. I love it. Cannot recommend this enough. And that is it for the highlight category. So now we're going to move on to the ball buster of a category, which is my cream and liquid blushes. So like if you've already made it through halfway through your snack, it might be time to like go grab another bag of popcorn, because here we go. All right, you guys, we are on to the blush category, rounding it out with blush. I have 29 blushes to rank. I thought I had 30 in my makeup inventory, which is why I'm like, I would not be surprised if I'm missing a blush somewhere. This was super hard, and a lot of this came down to shade for me. I would say I have about 6 like tippity top blush formulas, which we'll obviously get into more towards the top. But a lot of this, like some of like my favorite blush formulas are still like kind of like midway through the road, just because like it could be a shade thing, but then I also have multiples in the same formula. I hope that this is making sense. Also, I had to apply gloss. My lips are looking ridiculous, but let's start in dead last. I do not like this product at all, and I'm not sure if it's a shade thing or just an ease of use thing. I really want to get the more neutral shade in this because, you know, naturally if something doesn't work for me, why not just get a different shade? Great, my camera battery is gonna die. So coming in dead last is this cheek slime from Freck Beauty. I just find that this is really hard to use because it is a liquid blush, and it is so pigmented that it just does not blend out well. I find that it looks patchy on me, and I just find that it looks not good on me. So I've used this I think 5 times now, and every time I'm like, ugh, this might be the last time I use this. So I don't think that this one is that easy to use, which is such a bummer because I think the packaging is really cute and I was excited to try a new brand, but that just did not go well for me. Coming up next is the Maybelline Cheek Heat, and this is like a fine formula. It's just a really sheer blush, which is why I am ranking it lower. I do prefer something that's more than sheer when it comes to my blush, at least lately. And the formula is just not my absolute tippity top favorite. Like, it's fine, especially for a drugstore product, but I definitely have some favorite formulas over this one. If I didn't say, I have mine in the shade 20 Rose Vibrant. Next up is this one from Danessa Myricks. This is one of her Color Fix glazes, and you can use this on your eyes, lips, or cheeks. The shade that I have is Cupcake, which I think is a really beautiful mauve tone shade, and I'm excited to get more use out of this one in the fall time. For me, this is just a stickier formula that really doesn't set down, so it just kind of comes down to like the formula being sticky. The reason that I am ranking it lower, it does have a really good lasting time on it. I just don't love that it stays so sticky on the face, so that is why I'm ranking this one on the lower end of the spectrum. Next up, I have this one from Glossier. I do have another Glossier cloud paint that will be ranking higher. This one is in the shade Puff, which is just this really beautiful kind of baby pink shade. The reason I'm ranking this lower is 1 for formula and 2 for shade. It's not a shade I reach for on an everyday basis, and I do find that the Glossier cloud paints are not like the most beginner friendly because they are more pigmented, and it has really taken me like a while to figure out how I like to best use this. Usually I'll put some on the back of my hand and then pick it up on a stippling brush and then blend it out onto my face. rather than like I used to just like dot some onto my face. It is a liquid blush formula, and I'm definitely someone who prefers cream over liquid blushes just because I think they're easier to use. I still do like the Glossier Cloud Paint formula. I just don't think it's the most beginner friendly, and this shade specifically is just not something you reach for on an everyday basis. Then I have this RMS Beauty Lip to Cheek Glow Quad. This has 4 shades in it, 1 highlight and then 3 blushes. And I'm just definitely a bigger fan of the RMS highlighters than I am the blushes. I also just don't love that I just have to like rub my finger in here. I don't love how it's just like user friendly in terms of like being user friendly. It's not my favorite for that because I can't just put a brush in here. I have to use my finger, etc. So just not my absolute favorite. Then I have this one from Ilia, which I used to really like when I had a small cream and liquid blush formula. This is the multi-stick in the shade Dreamer, and I do think this is nice. It's just a little bit, it's a little bit more sheer. I do think it offers like a really beautiful, just like glowy sheer tint to the cheek. I used to just like apply this right onto the cheeks, but I definitely prefer to either swirl my brush right on top or like take a beauty blender and just put it on the beauty blender first and then dab it onto my cheeks. I just find that I like the way that it looks. I feel like it looks a little bit more airbrushed that way. I would like recommend this formula. I do think it's a little bit more expensive. For me, like it's a shade I don't wear. I love when I'm reaching, for some reason I just love like a sunburnt cheek, and this is just more of like a neutral cheek. So it really kind of is just coming down to shade on this one. And actually, I would probably switch these 2 that I'm about to talk about. This one I actually would probably rank lower than the Ilia one that I just talked about. This one is from Rare Beauty. It's the Nearly Neutral Melting Blush, and this is exactly that. It is a melting blush, so it is definitely more sheer. I do have to build this one up, and I'm just not the biggest fan of this formula in general. I like the shade, I just don't, I don't know, I just don't love the formula. For me, I find that it works best if I put this on my finger, dab it onto my cheeks, and then like blend it out with either brush or a sponge. But it's just not my favorite to apply or use. I liked this a lot when I first started using it, but I have tried so many cream blushes this year that this just is not a favorite anymore. Next up is another one from Ilia, but this is the Color Haze Multi-Use Pigment. Applicator on this one, not my absolute favorite, but this offers such a beautiful glowy flush to the cheeks. That is what I like kind of love about cream products, specifically like cream blushes, is they just offer this beautiful glow to the cheeks rather than being like flat like some like matte cream blushes, or not matte cream, matte like powder blushes. I've been loving a glowy cheek. I think this is nice. This is something too, if I happened to get in another shade, I definitely wouldn't be mad. Ilia, more expensive, but I do think it's a nice formula. Next up, I have this one from Florence by Mills. This is, I don't know what they call this, but this is in the shade Zen Z. This is another one that doesn't totally set down. It's a little bit stickier, but it's really easy to work with because it's super creamy and emollient. And this is one that usually I will just put on my finger and then dab onto my cheeks. I find that it sets best that way, but it doesn't totally set down. It's still a little bit sticky. Also a shade that I reach for more in the fall winter, and just not my like perfect blush shade, but I do think this is a nice formula, especially if you are looking for something more affordable from the drugstore. I think this is a really nice option. Then the product that really got me into cream blushes is this one from Milk Makeup. This is their stick in the shade Work. I got this like a year before it was the birthday present, and I thought this was such a beautiful color. I like that it's kind of just like your average kind of mid-toned blush shade. I think it's really easy to work with, blends really easily, just like the Melt Bronzing Stick. I can really apply this however I want, and I kind of apply it all different ways, just depends on the day. Sometimes I'll just swipe it right onto my cheeks. Some days I will swirl my brush. Some days I'll swirl my beauty blender. I think it looks nice any way you use it, and I also think this is really beginner friendly. So if you're just dipping your toes in cream blush products, I would recommend checking out the Milk Makeup line, and I would go with the mini sizes. This is a mini. Next up is this one from Rare Beauty. This is the Love Blush, and I can't remember if this is one of the glowy blushes or the matte blushes. I love this like rich terracotta for the fall time. The reason this is ranking a little bit lower is because the Rare Beauty blushes are super, super pigmented. So even a dot of product sometimes is a little bit too much. Like sometimes I'll dot this onto the back of my hand and then pick it up with a stippling brush and swirl it onto my face because it's just so pigmented. It's very easy to go overboard with this. So I would not recommend this to a beginner, and really couldn't rank this much higher just because it's not the most user-friendly product to use. I do have one other shade that I'm ranking just a couple above this. Next up, I have this one from Milani. This is the Cheek Kiss Blush in the shade Coral Crush. This is another really good option from the drugstore. The only reason I'm ranking this a little bit like kind of in the middle is just a shade thing. I love this shade, but also it's not like my most used shade. It's really beautiful in the summertime, very easy to work with, creamy but not like too creamy. And this is another one that like is really pigmented, but you can also sheer it out to just be so beautiful. So I do definitely recommend these ones from Milani. Next up, I have one of my Fenty Cheeks Out blushes. I have 4 of these to rank. This is one of my favorite cream blush formulas. This is just a shade thing, and I do love the shade. This is in the shade Rose Latte. It's just not a shade that I reach for all that often, really only in the fall winter, so I couldn't rank this higher because I was also trying to think about like how much have I actually used each of these products. And of all the other Fenty Cheeks Out blushes, this one probably gets reached for the most. Still a beautiful shade. Highly recommend this formula. It is one of my favorites. And then next I have my other Rare Beauty liquid blush. This is in the shade Joy. This is one of the dewy cheek blushes, and this is so beautiful on the cheeks if you don't go overboard. Again, not the most user-friendly formula, but I love the just dewy, juicy glow and the finish that this leaves when it's applied right, and it's so beautiful. I would have ranked this higher if it was more user-friendly, but it's just not. Next up is this one from Bite, and this would have ranked higher if it wasn't for the packaging of this. So this is in the shade Melon Mojito, and due to the packaging, this is really hard to get out. Like after the 3rd or 4th time that I use this, I actually like was struggling to squeeze the product out. I also find that this one is a formula that I work cheek by cheek rather than like I have to go one cheek at a time because this dries down quickly, and it's kind of hard to blend out once it starts to set, and it sets quicker than other cream and liquid blushes that I've used. That being said, I do think it has a really good wear time. I think the shade is beautiful. I don't think the shade will be for everyone because it does have a very intense glow to the cheeks. So if you don't like glowy cheeks, you are not gonna like this. I love the shade, I just don't like the packaging, and it is a little bit more of a difficult formula to work with. I don't think that one is very beginner friendly, so that's why I ranked it where I did. Then I have my other Glossier Cloud Paint. This one is in the shade Beam, which is like one of my favorite blush shades, just a really beautiful like peachy coral shade. The only reason I ranked this one a little bit lower is again just because ease of use. It's a liquid blush, a little bit harder to work with. Not like the most impossible, it just takes a couple of times to get used to, and yeah, I don't really have a whole lot more to say about that. I'm trying to get through my blushes really quick, can you guys tell? Next up I have this RMS Lip to Cheek blush in the shade Promise. I do really like this. It's a very creamy formula. You need the smallest product. This is one sometimes I'll swirl on my finger, swirl on the back of my hand, and then pick it up with a sponge or a brush, but this gives the most beautiful sunburnt look to the cheeks, which is something that I just love, as I've mentioned, and I really do enjoy the formula in the potted version from RMS. So next up is another Fenty Cheeks Out shade. I don't know that this one is permanent to their line. I believe I got this in a holiday set. It is in the shade Fenty Glow. It offers just the most beautiful, natural, blushy glow to the cheeks. Very easy to work with just due to the shade being very forgiving. I also think the Fenty Cheeks Out blushes are really forgiving or really user-friendly. But I just have other shades that I prefer over this one. And one of those shades is the Petal Poppin' shade, which is this really beautiful, kind of like poppy pink shade, but you can really sheer this out to just be like a natural flush to the cheeks. This is something I like to reach for on like lighter coverage makeup days, or even if I don't go in with foundation, I'll use this just to add a little bit of a flush to my cheeks, and I really enjoy it for that. We are into the top 10. Coming in at number 10, I have this one from Tower 28. It is the Magic Hour blush in the shade Beach Please. Really beautiful shade. My only gripe with this product is it's another stickier formula, and that doesn't just completely set down. This would have ranked higher if it set down completely, but it just doesn't, so I couldn't rank this one any higher than I did, but I still think it offers a really beautiful glow to the cheeks, and if you're okay with your cheeks being like a little bit sticky, I think this is a really beautiful one. Coming in at number 9, I have this one from Nude Sticks. It's part of their All Over Face Dewy. It's their dewy version, and this is in the shade Sweet Peach Peony. I do have this on my cheeks today. I'm testing out a bunch of new products. I don't know if I already said, I think I said that in this video already. But this is not a new test. This is something I'm currently trying to pan. I love this because it does still offer like a dewy glow to the cheeks, but it is a really forgiving shade and really easy to work with. Really easy formula to work with. I honestly just swirl my brush on top and then swirl it onto the cheeks, and it's just like, it just blends out really seamlessly, and it's very user friendly. Next up is another favorite formula of mine, and it is from Charlotte Tilbury. This one is in the shade Pinkgasm. I have another shade ranking a little bit higher. I know the applicator isn't for everyone, as I mentioned with a couple of the other wands from Charlotte Tilbury, but I find them to be really easy to work with. I think that the shade is really beautiful. I love the glow that it offers to the cheeks, and this is just a favorite for me from Charlotte Tilbury. Another favorite cream blush formula is from Kosas. I love their Color and Light cream duos. This one is in the shade, oh my gosh, I can't open this, Velvet Melon. And it comes with a blush and a highlight. I guess I could have ranked the highlights, but I really love these for the blush shades. This is like one of my like perfect blush shades for the summer. I love that coral, like corally shade. This is a really creamy texture and a little bit thicker, so it doesn't totally set down, but it's also not the most sticky formula, and I love this one from Kosas. And then speaking of, I'm ranking this one above it. This is my Tropic Equinox, and I love the highlight shade in this one as well. It's such a beautiful highlight shade, but I love just like the bronzy blush shade in this. It's like one of my favorite go-to shades for the summertime. Again, such a creamy formula. I personally think it's really easy to work with. I usually just swirl my finger in it and then tap it onto my cheeks and blend it out with a beauty sponge. So that one is definitely a favorite. My other Charlotte Tilbury wand is Peachgasm. I love a peachy blush, as I've said over and over, so that's why I ranked this one higher than Pinkgasm. Again, I think it's very user-friendly, very easy to apply, blends out so easy, so seamlessly. I just tap it on, use my beauty sponge, and I'm good to go. The Melt Cream Blush formula is another favorite of mine. This is the only one I've tried though, so I'm only speaking off this specific shade. This is in the shade Golden Hour, which I believe is one of the like glowy blushes. I also want to try one of the like more matte cream blushes. I love this shade. This quite possibly could be my favorite, most perfect spring summer shade. It's just the most beautiful thing ever. I love the glow that it gives to the cheeks, and I've been so freaking impressed with this. So definitely had to rank that one really high. Then I have this one from Fenty. This is my favorite Fenty Beauty blush. It's in the shade Strawberry Drip. Was a little bit nervous about this shade, kind of picked this up on a whim, but honestly, if you're looking for a sunburnt cheek, this gives it to me, and I am just obsessed. I think that the cream blush formula from Fenty is like one of the easiest to work with. I usually just put it on my finger and then dab it onto my cheeks, or even just dip my brush in and then pat my brush on my face. So easy to work with. One of my favorites. I don't know why anyone doesn't like that. I feel like you either love the Fenty Cheeks Out blushes or you don't. And I can't imagine like not loving it. Like I just love. Why don't you like them, for those of you who are out there that don't like them? Next up I have this is coming in at number 2. This is from Makeup by Mario. It's the Soft Pop Blush Stick, and I have the shade Earthy Pink. I just love this shade, and the formula is really easy to work with. It's pretty long lasting as well. I usually just swirl my brush on top to use this, but I wasn't thinking I was gonna love this blush shade, but it just looks so natural on the cheeks. Swatched, it looks a little bit more like pigmented and intense, but I usually sheer it out a little bit, and I just feel like it looks like the most natural flush to the cheeks. So I had to rank this one super high. One, because I do think that the formula is easy to work with, but two, it just gives, it's like one of my favorite just everyday blush shades. And then coming in at number one, I wouldn't say this is like my favorite formula, but it is definitely my most reach for blush, and it's actually a liquid blush, and it's from Daniel Sandler. It's the Watercolor Gel Cheek Color. I have mine in the shade Nectar. Such a neutral, almost just sheer blush shade, but it gives such a beautiful natural glow to the cheeks. I can mix this, like if something is a little bit too pigmented, for example, this Milani one sometimes gets a little bit too pigmented, I just pop this on top to kind of neutralize it, and it's the like most perfect thing ever. This is something that I will always want to have in my collection, and it kind of just gives like this like pinched, not even pinched, because it's more of like a just neutral, like almost like skin tone sort of shade, but it's so beautiful, so perfect, so easy to work with. I usually just pop a little bit onto the back of my hand and pick it up with a beauty sponge or a brush and then tap it out, and I'm good to go, and I just love this. So I had to recommend this one for my number one tippity top liquid blush. That is going to wrap it up for my cream product ranking video. I would love to know, what are some of your favorite cream and liquid formulas, whether it be bronzer, blush, or highlight. I want to know what I should be trying next. Thank you guys so much for sticking around to watch today's video and for supporting my channel as you always do. I love you guys so much, and I will catch you in my next video. Bye.